Hello and welcome once more to the Good Game Podcast. This is episode 6. My name is Lin Jie Kong, and today my guests are Ben Shackleford.
Hello.
Gus Ronald.
Hi there.
And making his podcast debut, Good Game supervising producer, Eliot Fish.
Hello there.
Hey!
Hello.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
And welcome back, Lynn.
Thank you. We have taken a bit of a break.
You've taken a break.
Yes. Well, the podcast took a break because I took a break. I had a very lovely trip to America. I went to New York and DC. It was fantastic.
Good.
I didn't want to leave,
Yeah,
but I had to because, you can only stay so long before Homeland Security gets to you, right?
Wow. What were you on the run from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Something. Being
Also,
an immigrant.
Who would push the buttons on our podcast?
Which is good because it kind of gives us a bit of time to reflect on the first few episodes of the show. And some of the new things which have come about.
Yeah.
And it's great getting, some of the audience responses to all the new elements. But before we start that, someone actually tweeted me whilst I was overseas. They wanted Ben, you, and Gus to talk about why you hated Deadpool. So you have 5 minutes.
I've heard this hate session a few times now, but I'm still interested.
How many Twitter followers did you lose?
I lost, I think, I looked at it and it was maybe 150 to 200 because I said on Twitter, I didn't even want to really describe why. I just basically said I hated the film. I thought it was a bit of rubbish. And I respect the character and I like Ryan Reynolds. I had a terrible time watching it.
Yeah.
Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think a film needs to be a few things, and those few things are generous, surprising, and unpredictable. And unfortunately for me, Deadpool was none of those things. I knew he was going to break the fourth wall. I knew it was going to be a wacky or crazy Marvel film. I knew that it was going to be R-rated. And so it did all those things, just enough to tick them off a box. But what it didn't do is it didn't push them any further. And you and I have talked about this, Gus. It could have really gone to level 10 on the breaking the fourth wall, on doing something really innovative and interesting, but for me it just felt really safe. Mixing that in with the fact that, look, I'm just going to be honest, I don't like Deadpool as a character. I'm not a fan of him. I've tried various comics that he's appeared in, and I just don't see the purpose of him. I know this is maybe a little bit controversial, but a hero needs to fight for something bigger than themselves. They need to literally save a school bus of children for me to connect with them. And I know that is a very narrow view of superheroes or any kind of hero, but they do need to step outside of their own world and think about the larger community. And I don't feel the film did that.
I think for me personally, all the reviews I've read, I haven't seen the film personally myself, have said that, oh, look, they are trying to do something new with the superhero genre. Sure. And I personally am kind of sick of the whole superhero genre. I think we've got franchise fatigue right now. So it's interesting coming from you guys. I get the sense that it doesn't really try and do anything new, right?
Well, for me, the biggest surprise was that, there was a lot of this talk of it was going to be this different superhero film because Deadpool is a very different kind of superhero, as Ben just pointed out. And for me personally, I was introduced to him through the game that came out a couple of years ago, which I thought was fantastic, voiced by Nolan North, and the character was so crazy. The game was just surreal. It was bouncing in and out of, dimensions, and it was really crazy whack-ball stuff. And then I read a few of the comics after that, and I thought, this is a character that's pretty fun. I get it. But nobody thinks Deadpool is a normal superhero character. I think every man walked into that film knowing that it was going to be different, but it wasn't different enough, as Ben said. And sure, as they broke the fourth wall once or twice, I think, he did a few little sort of moments of stepping outside of reality, but I think that's not enough to change up this superhero formula. And for me, I didn't find it surprising. Everyone was like, oh, there was a lot of blood. I'm like, it was R.
That was expected.
That was totally expected. As Ben said, nothing surprised me in that film. And to be fair, I should add, Ben put it very eloquently why he didn't like the film. I was also in, it was a boiling hot day. Everyone had BO in the cinema. The gentleman behind me had taken his shoes off and had put them between the gap in the seats. And a woman had brought her 2 children along who were of age 7 and 8, I would guess. So I was just angry at people in general. And then every time everyone laughed, I just looked at them all like, you're idiots. Why is this?
Isn't it interesting that, occasionally those extra things can just ruin your experience at the theatre or at the cinema?
That's true.
I went and saw a few plays and musicals in New York, and in one of them I had quite a very large lady next to me who proceeded to eat chips and peanuts through the entire second act of Hamilton. Yeah. And, there I am trying to concentrate on some, rap about, like, the first treasurer of the US, founding father. Yeah. And this woman is just chewing nonstop next to my ear. And I'm like, why? Why can't you eat at home? Yeah. Why do you have to be here consuming, snacks?
Still, way to go one-up us. It's like, we were watching Deadpool. When I was at the theatre...
I was at the theatre in New York watching a Broadway play.
Just dropping the fact that I got to see Hamilton, which is fantastic. Cool. All right. So, Eliot, are you going to see Deadpool?
I'm just glad I've saved like $20 now.
So I don't know, E, because you're a hardcore Marvel fan from days past. We often talk about comics, and I feel like you might actually get a little bit more out of it.
Possibly, but like I've never read any of those Deadpool comics.
Sure. Okay.
So all I know of the character is little bits and pieces I've seen. Snippets of the panels and the comic.
Sure.
In various places, and my impression of the character was that he made fun of the other Marvel heroes. And so that was a big part of the appeal of the character, and I kind of like that. But it sounds like this Deadpool is more just about sort of being douchey and.
I mean, Ryan Reynolds kind of surpasses that, because I actually quite like Ryan Reynolds. So I was like, I kind of like you. Like, I want to like you, but it just didn't go far enough.
And there were a few things in the film in terms of its pacing, in terms of its setup for its scenes, that felt very lazy. The structure of it was a bit chopped up, so it was like, here's the beginning in the middle, and they'd moved a few things around. Nothing other films haven't done a lot more adventurously and a lot better. Including the fact that one of the biggest problems I had with the film is that Ryan Reynolds' character, as the character of Deadpool, gets horribly disfigured, and that's why he wears the mask, and suddenly he's really self-conscious about how he looks. Well, to be fair, like at the beginning, Ryan Reynolds' character is a complete egomaniac who doesn't care what anyone thinks. And then when they put on all the prosthetics for the character, he's not that hideous. You can still see it's Ryan Reynolds, and you're like, you do all right, mate. You're still like a pretty... And suddenly his whole conflict of character has to be that, I'm ugly, I have to go underground and never see anyone. It just didn't make sense.
A slightly disfigured Ryan Reynolds is still too pretty. To be kind of believable in that, I guess, facet of that role.
And if the film doesn't care enough about those little things, for me, I just think they're taking their audience for granted, and clearly they picked the right audience to do that with.
Yeah, we are so in the minority.
Yep.
It's the highest rating R-rated or highest grossing R-rated film of all time.
Guaranteed sequel or sequels.
Oh, absolutely. And now they're talking about Wolverine being an R-rated film, so, we're in the minority.
It's just funny how that's becoming part of the marketing now too, isn't it? It's like, hey, everyone, Wolverine's going to be R2.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually feel like maybe the marketing for Deadpool was actually so strong that I was expecting something quite innovative in the filmmaking, because the marketing was quite innovative.
I totally agree. That was something that had me going, right, these guys know what people are expecting, so they should know how to, go beyond those expectations. And I think watching it, some of the punchlines were like literally wading through a swamp. They were so slowly delivered, and you just could see every setup coming. It felt like it was completely aimed at the lowest demographic, and they're the ones with the most money, and I'm going to lose more Twitter followers if I keep talking, so I'm going to shut up now.
Dear listeners, if you've got an opinion on Deadpool, tweet into us. We'd like to hear it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you hate it as much as Ben and Gus?
Controversial opinion. I enjoyed Ant-Man more, and there I'll leave it at that.
I'll okay.
Second
Shots fired. All right, moving on to Good Game. So we've started 2016 off with a bang, I guess, with an hour episode of Good Game.
We did.
And we have changed up a few things this year. We've brought in a few new segments, kind of refreshed, I guess, the formula of the show. Yep. Spawn Point as well has had a refresh with new titles, and we've changed, updated a segment in Spawn Point as well. So I guess I'll just kick off. What's the ideology behind... I guess the changes, Ben?
I guess it feels like it was the right time. First and foremost, Good Game is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. We've been on air for 10 years. So that's
party blower sound effects button.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'll put that in.
Put that in later.
Put it in post.
So I think now is a good time to change up the format a little bit. We talked about it last year, but it just didn't feel like the timing was right. So there is that aspect, which is first. The second aspect is the changing nature of media. And I know that sounds like a big wanky sort of...
I'm shooting out.
term, but the reality is we are finding that many more of our viewers are watching the show on iView and on YouTube. And I think that people engage with their content slightly differently when they are watching it through those mediums as opposed to when they're watching it through television. Yes, we are first and foremost a TV show. We go to air 8:30 on a Tuesday night on ABC2, but we have to be realistic and look at the way that people are watching Good Game. And I think that from that point of view, we need to look at what else is being made and released on iView and YouTube and all the rest of it. And it is content which is maybe a little bit more interactive, maybe it's a little bit more immediate, maybe it's a little bit more up-to-date, maybe it's a little bit more opinion-based. So I guess that was part of the motivation behind it. Also, we're a bigger family now. Good Game is always Barjo and Hex front and centre, of course, but we've also got Goose, we've also got Nick Boy, we've also got Hingers. Good Game is a broader family, and I was really keen to bring in that broader family to Good Game even more and more.
Yeah, you bring up a great point in terms of the changing nature of the media and the industry. Eliot, I want to come to you. Our listeners might not know your history with the gaming media, but you've had a very long, successful career in the games
This is why
industry.
Rad calls me Dad. Rad and Sam call me Dad.
We all call you Dad.
We have a meme around the office, which is,
Eliot is Dad.
Eliot is Dad of Good Game.
Yeah.
Eliot, do you want to give our listeners maybe just a short rundown of your career?
Okay, well, I wrote my first game review in 1994. So there you go. That might give you some perspective. And it was an NES title. It was Wizardry on the NES. I did it for Hyper Magazine.
Wow.
And that kind of got me in working for Hyper Magazine, which is a national glossy multi-format games magazine, which now is, I think, only quarterly, but used to be monthly. And I sort of was working on that in the late 90s then. I became deputy editor of Hyper when games like, Quake were getting released and Wipeout and the first PlayStation. And then eventually was offered the role of editor and edited Hyper Magazine for about 4 years. This is back when, there was really not much games coverage on the internet. I mean, there were a few little portals that wrote some stuff, but we were still assessing games based on screenshots,
Wow, yeah.
Just single screenshots. And part of the fun of working on Hyper was writing silly captions for those screenshots.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
And there were, there'd be like a cover disc or something, and there'd be demos and things like that. And that was how you sort of got an understanding of what a game was like. And then I left Hyper and ended up writing for Icon in the Sydney Morning Herald, when that was actually a big lift out on the Saturday, if anyone remembers that.
I read that, yeah. I remember
got relegated to the Monday, and then it shrunk in size, then it sort of vanished. But we used to cover games every Saturday in the Sydney Morning Herald, and somehow ended up doing some work for Good Game. And
did you come on the show in 2008?
End of 2009.
Yeah. So you've been on the show probably one of the longest people.
Yeah, I took a year off in the middle, but I've roughly been here for 6 years.
You've been here for a long time, which places your 20 years plus of experience in the games industry puts you in a fantastic position to really comment on kind of how you've seen games evolve and how you've seen the games media evolve in this country.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think when I was working in magazines, we used to always have the discussion about what the internet was doing to us, and we felt like circulations were dropping because the what you got on the internet was becoming more sophisticated. Even just seeing the game footage, just watching videos was there before people started to actually do video reviews of things. There was still pretty much written word on the internet that we were worried about. And obviously that slowly transformed into, YouTube then happened, and then it's become about vlogging and people just sitting in front of a camera and giving their impressions of a game. And you're getting the gameplay, you're getting someone's impressions. It's just so much more immediate and so much more easy to consume. The old format of delivery, of a critique of a game, has changed so dramatically. And it's interesting, working in television, of how do we provide an entertaining show that sort of delivers information and delivers opinion, that is still relevant in the face of this kind of immediacy that you get with people just Twitch streaming in games that have just come out that you're interested in sort of finding out about. And that's a big challenge. And I think maybe something that we were doing last year, I think which we all felt, was we were doing too many reviews. We're putting too much pressure on Barjo and Hex. And I'd say a lot of the changes this year have also come about as a bit of a course correction too. It's kind of like we don't need to review sort of everything. And some games that we were reviewing last year didn't really warrant a full 5 minutes of television. Like 30 seconds into the review, you could be saying, I get it. I get what this game is about. I already know if I'm interested. I don't need to now sit through another 4 minutes. So we've kind of really knocked that on the head this year. I think we're going to be doing possibly less reviews, but the ones that we do cover are going to be a bit more in depth.
Yeah, I see the biggest difference in terms of, television, as we've discussed, and something like a Twitch stream or, YouTube Let's Play. Those guys have the luxury of having, say 2-3 hours of, putting their story or their content online, and we've got 30 minutes, to deal with. And for us, then we have to pick and choose what is most important and what is most informative and entertaining and, best for our audience, right? So we're almost the curators of the content. Like, we have to make that decision. So I want to talk a bit about some of the new segments. Goose, you have a new segment called IMO. Tell us a bit about that and how it came about.
Well, so basically the idea behind the IMO was that we have a very vocal office who often spend lunch breaks discussing things that are happening in the gaming industry, specific to games or broader than that, and we find that that's an entertaining thing that happens here, and that's something we wanted to move on to into the format of the show. And I think what Eliot was saying before in terms of the amount of work we were putting into reviews was there's a lot of time has to be sunk into a game to come up with some words for a review that, you're right, people might just make their mind up straight away, whereas opinion is something that you can really expand on and write a lot more fluidly, because it is something that stems from your opinion and you share it with other people, and you can sort of you can come up with a lot more content that is based around discussion, and that is a really interesting thing to do. And so the idea behind the IMO was to take a news story, because we were actually looking to replace the news, because the problem with that was we weren't current.
We were 2 weeks behind those news items.
The nature of television
and because Pocket, the changes in the Pocket formula this year meant that it was covering news every day.
And news always felt like we were always a bit behind the 8 ball, and then to bring Pocket in, who were, day by day up to date with the news, it really made it felt like this is completely redundant now. So the idea was to replace it with a thought piece about something that was relevant to that week's news, or maybe the week before. But it also gives us the opportunity to even maybe turn one of those segments around with a very short time frame. So if something big does drop on the weekend before the episode on Tuesday, we might be able to get in, film it, put it together and throw it into the episode, so we've got something up to date. And that is us competing, I think, with the internet in terms of they can do that. And so that was the idea behind that.
Can I add to that as well, though,
Definitely.
Gus? When we were talking about that segment last year with all of us, one thing that I was really keen on was including the opinions of our viewers. I think I love that back and forth conversation that we have with our viewers. And when we first did the very sort of first early version of Pocket, which was a 10-minute version, which ran on, what was it, Saturday nights or something?
Yeah, it was like the cut-down version.
It was a cut-down version, the big show. The one thing we did in there, which was the original piece of content, was a you review, which was basically where our viewers could say, look, guys, I didn't agree with your review of Dark Souls 2. I thought such and such and such. And I just wanted to somehow bring back that interaction we have with our audience. And I think the formula we have now, where Goose's IMO goes to air on a Tuesday night, we give our fan community an opportunity to respond to Gus, to either agree with him, disagree with him, just put their thoughts and opinions, and then that is discussed in the following day's episode of Pocket with Gus and Nick Boy. Is a great opportunity for us to say to our fans, look, we listen to you, and come and agree with us, disagree with us, let's have a conversation.
How do you think, how important do you think fan interaction or audience interaction is for Good Game?
I I mean, unlike Eliot, I came from a television background, and I've always been a casual gamer. I've become more hardcore as time's gone on. But one thing I've learnt about gamers while making this show is they're very vocal, and they like to know that we are paying attention, and we absolutely are. We are reading all the comments. I'm looking at the ratings. I'm following Twitter, and I just want to acknowledge that, guys, you are part. The reason Good Game has survived for 10 years is because of you. So we're part of you, you're part of us. We're all hopefully one big happy family.
Right, we don't always maybe acknowledge some of the criticisms.
Yeah, that's right.
In the comments and stuff, we take them to heart.
Yeah,
definitely.
We really discuss all that stuff.
You're right. The format of television is far. It's a lot more difficult to have that direct response. We can't
really
dedicate a chunk of the show just to reading back comments and talking on them, like a lot of people do with their internet-based form of media. And that was the idea behind the IMO, was that at least we can get people. They don't have to disagree or agree. Like, if they just want to add to the discussion and add to the conversation, it is a much nicer feeling to know that there is at least somewhere that this is being, that I can direct some of my input to the show. And also, just don't hate me too much as well, because I mean, this is another fun thing about that segment, is that we can be a little more passionate about a certain opinion, and being, you know, part of the ABC, we have to be very impartial, and we have to make sure that we always give a balanced argument, which we still do in these. But we're enjoying the idea that we can get a little more passionate, a little more hot under the collar about certain pieces of news, and at the same time we can inject a bit of humour in there as well, and it just makes for a more entertaining piece of TV, hopefully.
I think it comes down to ownership, right? You know, a lot of the comments I've received through Facebook today have asked about, you know, would we consider more user-generated content on the show, or more, you know, community involvement? And I think for our fans, and you know, if you're a fan of anything, you know, whether comic books, films, or, you know, your ownership as part of that fandom is so important to your relationship with a show or a book or something, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, I think that's so important for us as part of the Good Game family to always kind of keep that relationship strong with the audience.
Yeah.
Can I just bring up one interesting aside on the news segment that we used to have? And what a lot of people probably don't really understand is how sort of ABC editorial policy also comes into play when you're writing games news, because so much of games news on the internet pertains to release dates, when games are coming out, when games have slipped, or all that kind of stuff, which is really interesting as a gamer who's looking forward to something. But on the show, we couldn't really run news stories like that because they feel very promotional.
Yeah.
You know, so-and-so game is coming out in June. You know, you can't really kind of do that.
Like, I think it was the Fallout special limited edition coming with a Pip-Boy. Yeah. Like, that was across, you know, gaming websites everywhere.
Yeah, and I would have come across as, like, super promotional.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure,
like, straight away you would think, like, that's cool, that's awesome that a company's doing that, that's fun that it's out there. Throw it down in news on television, and suddenly you're like, that's a big ad for Fallout. Exactly. That doesn't feel right here. And so you're right, news was a difficult beast to wrangle, because
always sort of crippled by that to some degree, and we'd always be trying to find stories that were still sort of gaming news, but, you know, avoided a lot of these problems. And it's really nice to not really worry about that anymore, because we all know you're going to get your news every day from Pocket or from, you know, your favourite site or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now we can just focus on those key topics.
The ones that hopefully you guys at home are also talking about. Yeah. Hopefully when you see Gus talking about franchise fatigue in the Assassin's Creed series, you're kind of sitting home going, yeah, I agree with him, or no, I don't, but I've actually just been thinking about that, you know? Yeah. Part of the zeitgeist.
You know, it's kind of bringing up topic of conversations, right?
Yeah.
And again, extending that relationship to our audience and saying, you know, think about this as well, because we are, and we want to know your opinion.
And look, also to put it out there as well, it's a popular thing that's happening on TV a lot more these days, and, you know, we'd be lying if we said we didn't pay attention to other, you know, shows. And the obvious thing is the obvious one is John Oliver doing Last Week Tonight, or
Charlie Pickering
on the Weekly. These kind of, you know, heated discussion, or just bringing up a topic that everyone can talk about, is an entertaining way to digest information, and at the same time, as I said, inject some humour, but, you know, just bring up something that everyone can go, yeah, I have or haven't thought about that. And it's more fun to write about, it's more fun to get audience engagement, rather than just, you know, redigesting some news stories or coming up with a puff piece that doesn't really have any gravity to it.
Yeah.
And if people are interested in how that also gets to air to some degree, the discussion topics that Goose will bring up get debated fiercely in the office.
Oh, God,
absolutely.
Before that thing goes to air as well, and it always comes back to your opinion, doesn't it? But it's interesting how we still sort of thrash those things about between us. It's the kind of thing that we chat about over lunch will be, that stuff, like you said, about Assassin's Creed not coming out this year.
And you're right, it's difficult because, I might be quite stubborn in a certain opinion, and so far we've been okay with how we've gone with the subjects we've chosen, but the way we put them together with writers here, it's sort of, I am concerned that we are going to eventually hit a point where I'm furiously sure about this certain opinion and everyone in the office is going to disagree with me, and I'm like, I'm going to drop it, I'm going to have to put the foot down and say, guys, it's Goose's opinion here. And then I'm just going to get booed out of the office like a diva, but until that point in time, they've been going pretty smoothly so far.
Yeah, great. I'd like to move on to the casual chats.
Yes.
About the various games. Now,
I would say this one has been the most controversial.
Yes,
from the Twitter feed that has come back to me personally and on Facebook.
So let's talk a bit about how it came about and, what's the inspiration behind that new segment.
Okay, going back to what I said about how probably that we covered too many games in depth last year in a review. There are games that are released that are interesting and that maybe we want to talk about. We don't really need to do a full 5-minute review on. It might be something that is a bit of a guilty pleasure for someone on the team, or say Barjo has been playing a beta of something and he just sort of briefly wants to talk about his stupid character he's created, right? We don't need to spend 5 minutes on the show doing that. This is a format for us to bring up some of those things and let those guys chat about little things that they're playing on the side that they're just fitting into their playtime that are interesting or that they've got a thing for.
You bring up a good point because more and more we're seeing smaller and smaller indie or just solo developed things which there is not much more substance to the game rather than that just small experience. And I'm trying to think of a good example, but if you try to flesh a review around that, like they are still important, they are still fun, but once you describe that core mechanic and maybe where the developer was coming up with that idea, there is nothing else to talk about. And
the viewer, I mean, all they need to hear is say your opinion of Lost in Harmony, which is a game which we haven't covered on the show, which we've been talking about. Gus, that I know that you played, and look, it's a free runner, isn't it? That's essentially what it is. You can explain it in like 10 seconds, and just say it's worth playing. And check it out.
You look
That's
at the
all
visuals.
You need to say.
I think to extrapolate anything more is just you're just padding. Or you're just sort of you're speculating and you're just talking in circles. And I think it's nicer to have this ability to have sort of shorter, concise little looks at different games or different things that interest us.
And there's also that aspect of going back a few years now when we were pretty much all obsessed with DayZ. And that came about because Barjo found it. He jumped in. He got all of it. Oh, sorry, you found it, did you, Goose? There we go. Okay. Well, there
Get
you go.
the story straight.
Get the story straight. Get the facts right.
No one believed it would be fun, and I said we should give this a go.
Well, there you go. And see, you found it. You put it onto Hex and Barjo. You guys all got involved in it, and that came about because of conversation in the office. So if something like that pops up again, like War of the Roses or something like that, then that's a great opportunity for a couch chat because exactly it may not be warranted. It may not warrant a review. Maybe we've already reviewed it. Maybe it's too early to review. But all you guys want to talk about your character creation or an interaction, a great story that came from you guys all jumping into it.
And like you just mentioned, like some games are in early access for ages. And, you can't. It's not really fair to review a game that's in early access. So they might just be one of those games that we want to talk about just briefly that we've had a go of, and it's just like, here's what we think.
And to be fair on Barjo and Hex and myself, we're not only playing the new games.
No, that's right.
We have our favourites that we go back to, or we might stumble across something that we just missed and that we went, I'm going to go back and play a bit of this, and suddenly that, as you said, might be a guilty pleasure, and it would feel strange to then sort of retcon a review into the couches downstairs in studio and suddenly have this, here's something we just missed. That would feel strange in that environment. So what those chats hopefully can enable us to do is have this sort of informal talk where
informal is the key word.
Yeah, exactly. We're still working on it.
And we're working, and that's the thing. We are.
True.
We are working on it. Look, be honest with you guys. We basically put Barjo, Hex, and Goose down on the couch, and we just hit record on 2 cameras and just go. That's it. There's no real heavy producing from our point of view on those particular conversations, because we want them to be as natural as possible. We want them to be just off the cuff.
But this goes back to what you were saying previously, Ben, that the Good Game family has grown.
Oh yeah.
Incredibly in say the last 2 years.
Yeah, both in front of and behind the camera.
Exactly, and in a way, stylistically, I think for both shows, we're trying to kind of get that familial feel in terms of some of the content that we produce, for the audience, and we want the audience to feel almost like they're eavesdropping or part of that conversation on the couch, or part of that roundtable conversation that we're having in the office. To be part of that massive Good Game family.
Yeah.
Can I make a note that as we said, it was a little rough, the first one in the first episode, and that's just gives us more motivation to work on that segment. Little things like we're sitting awkwardly, like we're at a strange party, and we're still getting the dialogue down of just having a natural conversation just on camera.
Shuffle your chair.
Exactly. But what I will say is that a friend of mine who I chat to regularly, who used to be a gamer and occasionally catches the show, he saw that first episode and mentioned to me the other night that he said, I really enjoyed that real casual tone that everyone had.
Yeah.
And I was there going, that segment, we still need to work on it. And he said, no, I really enjoyed it. And he said, in fact, when it went back down to the chairs, I was like, now they're, doing the usual kind of like the performance for it, which he still enjoyed, but he was like, I did miss that kind of natural tone. And I thought, oh, wow, great. Straight away.
And I mean, that's the thing, Gus, you said it there. We didn't 100% it, you know what I mean? But the thing is, it was first episode back. We've all been on holiday. We will continue to craft that. It took, many years to get Good Game to where it is now, and it will take a little bit of time before that roundtable. But we're trying one in the next couple of episodes. I think the Street Fighter chat that Barjo had in one of the last episodes was really great, and we want to do more of that.
I think something that's been really helpful in that regard has been the Pocket chats.
Yeah.
Because Pocket's changed its format a bit this year, which I'm sure we'll cover. And now with Nick getting in a guest, someone from the office, and also one of the hosts as well to chat.
Yeah.
And it is a real natural conversation in there, and that's been something that's been really healthy to get everyone comfortable with just being able to articulate how they feel about a certain topic or a game or something like that. And I think that's been a really helpful part of the process, and hopefully we'll just get better at it.
Yeah. Let's move on. Nick Boy's first plays.
Yes.
So that's something very new.
That is
so
very different.
A lot of people, have enjoyed it.
Yes.
But a lot of other people have gone, I thought that belonged on Pocket. What is this doing on the big show? How did that come about?
There's two things. There's two reasons for this for me. First of all, I do want to get games that are in early access or beta on the show. I just want to get more stuff that people can kind of go and interact with immediately, and before it gets to that full review stage. The other aspect of it is I personally find Nick incredibly entertaining on television, and I like watching him play. I like his analysis, I like his reactions. I think he is an entertaining gamer to watch, and I just wanted to put him on the show because I think that a lot of our audience will enjoy it. I do think that it is a stark difference, because if you are not active in the Good Game Pocket community, if you don't watch it, here's a new face. We're obviously very aware of Goose, very aware of Barjo and Hex, obviously.
He's not a big departure from me, let's be honest.
That's true.
It's brother from another mother.
Exactly.
Right? There we go. So I can imagine some people who purely watch Good Game on Tuesday, 8:30 on ABC2, they may be like, who is this guy and where has he come from? But I think if you give it a little bit longer, if you give him a moment to talk through his analysis, to talk through his gameplay, why he's talking about it, I think that you'll engage with him a lot more and just enjoy the segment.
Yeah, there's part of the appeal of, when you're watching a Let's Play, is part of the appeal there is seeing someone experience something in the moment.
Yes, that's right, off the cuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They're playing the game. You see what's happening in the game, and getting to just see the reaction
Yes.
on someone's face.
Yeah.
Which is something we don't normally get to see on Good Game unless it's been a multiplayer game where you guys have had little webcams of yourselves playing.
Yeah.
Which is always fun.
And
we're going to do more of that this year
Yeah,
too.
we're going to do more of that.
And we like to inject, like, you know, or to run some voice recording while we're playing to pick up those natural reactions. But I think with Nick's segment, it gives the ability to really edit and finesse these great reactions, which he has. I agree with Ben. I find him incredibly entertaining to watch. I think what's interesting is that these reactions we're getting, any of the slightly negative reactions saying, oh, this is internet, why am I seeing it on my TV? I'm wondering if those are the people who like Let's Plays and who are, you know, who are now watching it and just feeling that slight discomfort. There's Barjo dying in the background there.
I was going to say to all our listeners, that is genuine Barjo coughs.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
We're all sick in the office. I'm curious as to this, how long it will take people to get more used to seeing more internet-based, you know, formats on TV, because I think we're ahead of the curve.
But it's also our reaction to the fact that a lot of our audience members want more gameplay on our show.
Yes.
You know, they want to see more games.
Yeah.
And this is our, you know, reaction to that almost. You know, we are going to have more, you know, first plays or and you know, play through more games on the show, both in multiplayer and in single player.
And to be fair, as well, like that segment is still pretty heavily edited as well. It's
Extremely
not
so.
It's not like we sit Nick down and that is just his entire playthrough. I think
on average he plays about an hour to an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and we get 5 minutes from that.
Exactly. So then to cut that down into something that is, I think, even more entertaining than just watching the live stream, which you can do on Pocket anyway.
Yeah.
I think is a great format of TV, and I think that is a step above just watching a Let's Play on TV, which is why I think we're bringing something new to it.
And I think he wraps it up really nicely at the end. He kind of talks about, all right, so here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like, here's what works, here's what doesn't work. And then he always finishes with, you know, will there be a second play? And that's sort of the analysis that comes out for there. And later on in the series of Good Game, so for example, the first one he did was The Division. Don't worry, we will do a full Division review once the game is available. And it will be with Barjo and Hex, probably you as well, Goose, playing multiplayer, but it will be with Barjo and Hex in studio, giving a star review and a full, detailed, in-depth review.
And I think that was one of the pitfalls with when we experimented with doing first plays and early access, is when you do it in the traditional format that we used to, we would often, you know, use up some of the good stuff that we probably want to use in the review later on.
Yeah.
And with Nick's format, it allows for a much more natural, a much more organic reaction process that
a different perspective.
Yeah,
exactly. And another perspective,
you know?
You're right. Yeah. Just to note on top of that as well, I just recently went and got a hands-on with Dark Souls 3 because both Nick and Barjo were unable to go and have a first play with it, and so we went out to record one, which hopefully we can get to air at some stage. And I have to give Nick credit. It is a real art to be able to play a game, to analyse it, to be entertaining at the same time. I hope the segment comes together, but it was a stressful... Not to mention, the game was Dark Souls, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm playing a game that, you know, if I just, you know, didn't pay attention to for a moment, I was going to die, and then, you know, the camera person would look at me and be like, I'm so sorry, I've got to do that again. And so it's a real challenge. So, you know, credit where it's due. Like, Nick really knows how to turn on the entertainment factor, and it's not easy. I don't think anyone, like, thinks that, oh, I can get out there and just do a Twitch stream, or I can just be a Let's Play, I can be PewDiePie, or anything like that. No, it's hard. It's really hard.
I pictured this footage coming back of you with just the stress veins in your forehead.
Just sweating. My voice goes up quite high.
I bet it does.
More frown lines.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess the only other thing I think about the first place is it's going to give us a chance just to get more variety of game. Barjo and Hex are probably not going to review American Truck Simulator. That is the reality of it. But we can do it in a first play because... Yeah, do we really need an in-depth 11-minute review of American Truck Simulator?
Some
Probably
people would
not.
say yes, Ben, but most people will probably say no.
Truck review, man.
I mean, also all the hosts have different favoured genres as well.
That's true.
So Nick is into sort of a set of games that more so than maybe Gus, Barjo or Hex. So it's just, you know, he's going to be able to talk from a more experienced point of view on certain genres.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm going to quickly move on to Good Game Spawn Point, just for the last 10 minutes or so.
Cool.
So we've updated the titles and the logo. and I'm really proud of it. So great work, Gus, as well on the titles.
Credit back to Lin as well.
And a new refreshed music.
Oh yes,
of course.
And Mr. Eliot Fish with the new
on the
music.
keyboard.
Just pats on the back for everyone.
I
guys.
still think the music is too low. The sound effects are too loud.
Oh, okay. We'll have to go over that again.
Things to work on.
We need a meeting.
Yes,
about that.
things to work on in later episodes. Gus, I wanted to ask you, where did your inspiration come from for the opening titles?
Yeah, so that was an interesting sort of couple of weeks of having to redesign what were, I think, fairly dated titles. It was a similar update to what we did for the Big Show, I think, maybe 3 years ago now.
Back at the start of 2014.
Which is, some people have a fond attachment to the old titles, but the logos and everything do feel very, very dated. And so the idea was to do something that just felt more video game centric. And so the thing that jumps to mind when I think of that is retro pixel art. I love chiptunes. I love pixel art. I love retro stuff. And I know maybe kids don't know as much retro stuff, but it is an art form that has stayed prevalent.
Look at Terraria.
Yeah, look at the types of games that kids play.
And that's what we did. We looked at the games that kids play and looked at how many games now still come out and go for that aesthetic. So there are things like Crypt of the Necrodancer and Terraria, like you mentioned. And it's a very aesthetically pleasing art form. And so we thought this would just be something fun we can do. We panicked a bit, I think, leading into it. So we went for a redesign on the logo, and we went for voxels and these cubist-style, Minecraft-y blocks don't sue us kind of look. And then for the titles themselves, I sat down and I started to draw out all the assets. Darren, it's a little adventure. It tells a little narrative. It's Darren leaving Mars and leaving his little family and jettisoning off to Earth, and as he travels through all these sort of video game scenes, all these sprites and characters move around, and the idea was to make something very busy and very colourful, and the idea is so kids could watch it, at the start of every week.
But it has a very strong storyline throughout, for all of its 12 seconds worth.
Those 12 seconds feel like a lifetime when you're drawing
there's
everything.
There's a 5-act structure. It's almost Shakespearean, the level of narrative in there, right?
I wouldn't go that far. Shakespeare never really got to my level of...
I also love just how many little Easter eggs there are. I was going to say,
that's the most.
Yeah.
Spotting something different every time.
Yeah, exactly. Every time you watch, you might catch something different, which is nice.
Yeah, and so, the idea was to do that and then to make it feel like something just more video gamey, because watching the old ones back, they were great, but I didn't feel like it was part of a video game anymore. And
I think if you watch a show, only one episode's gone to air. I think by the time this podcast comes out, 2 episodes would have gone to air.
Yep.
I think if you look at the set with the new logo, it looks poppier. It looks brighter, more colourful, more energetic. And also we've changed the old Darren cave into Darren's portal.
Looks fantastic.
Which I am really, really excited to explore.
Think of the possibilities with writing.
I'm thinking, as I mentioned to Gus last week, I'm thinking a Sliders parody.
Yes. That would be great.
It's been a while.
The kids' heads.
Darren's going to be John Rhys Davies, right?
Yes. He talks too much, and I love the idea of the portal, as I was saying to you on set the other day, just never works, never goes to the right place, which is essentially Sliders. You're right. So every time we try to use that portal to go somewhere, we have to just get kicked out in the strangest places and vice.
There has to be like a gate joke somewhere.
I was about to say,
someone
who's
needs to
Richard Dean Anderson, for Stargate.
Oh, from
parody.
Stargate.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There's so many portal parodies.
There's a lot of special effects I'm going to have to do this year.
And the other big thing is Goose's gaming picks, which again we've refreshed the news on Spawn Points, and we've incorporated more user generated content. And it's something that we've always wanted to do for Spawn Point, is to kind of get the kids to send in what they make and what they do, because we all know they are so creative.
And they do that, and they've been doing that for the past couple of years anyway. We get things in the inbox like little drawings, or people send through the Minecraft world. And it's thinking of a way, as you said, that we can get that on the show and show it off. And I think, as we mentioned with news before as well, news was difficult to wrangle on the Big Show. On the kids show as well, often we would find most news stories would cover games that we couldn't talk about with the kids, or there were deaths or things like that, and so we weren't just looking to pad it out, but kids actually enjoy going through the internet and finding fun little interesting videos and things.
Sorry.
No, and just things that grab their attention, and that is news to kids, and whether it's something to do with robotics or to do with space. So this just gave us the ability to, I like the idea that we do sort of a newsy story, we do something fun we found on the internet, and then we do something that a Spawnling has sent in. And if we go by that, we'll see what kind of stuff we end up with this year.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, like, the appeal of user-generated content even goes back to magazines. I mean, in the late 90s, Hyper magazine, the letters section was the most popular part of the magazine.
Yeah.
And people would send in drawings, and you'd print the drawings in there, of game characters.
I learned how to draw Mario and Yoshi, and they always had to be like killing Sonic. If you sent your picture into a Nintendo magazine, all the letters were like Mario decapitating Sonic because they were like so anti-Sega, and vice versa. If you were looking in a Sega magazine, it was all like these little I drew this picture of someone ripping Yoshi apart. These terrible pictures and stuff, drawn in crayon.
I think maybe part of the appeal in
don't send that in, kids.
Seeing other people's.
Did you get pulled aside at school? Drawing.
I did for a lot of stuff I drew, but
child psychologist.
Let's not talk about that.
Part of the appeal of that stuff is that as a reader, is that or as a viewer now with this kind of stuff, is that you feel this stuff is unfiltered. You're getting a letter verbatim. It hasn't been edited.
Plus, it just allows me to sort of flex my sort of performance as, I think it's almost going for the soup. It's that kind of cheesiness. I think I even picked out a cheesy jacket for the segment, and it's just fun to sort of be very energetic with kids stuff as well.
I didn't pick it. I mean, look, I've just come back, so I directed the 3rd episode.
Yep.
But now that you mention it, the soup, my God, yes.
And it's that sort of way we've got a little picture-in-picture, and, it's kids stuff is fun because you've got to keep the energy up, and you've got to keep them feeling like, oh, my picture might come up this week.
We keep talking about kids and what we think they like.
That's true.
My constant worry with Spawn Point, I don't know kids who watch the show. I don't really know kids per se. So I have this constant worry that whatever we do, do kids actually like it?
I was worried the opening titles might give kids seizures. So I was sort of like, hopefully they don't just switch on and go, what on earth am I watching now?
So I'm interested, listeners, if you know kids who watch Spawn Point, if you have kids who watch Spawn Point,
kids.
Let us know what they like, what they don't like, because often I think we go about making Spawn Point because we're perpetually 12 anyway.
Yeah,
in the Good Game Office, we make it for our 12-year-old selves.
Yeah. That's kind of the thing. I think that's a little bit of the secret as to why it's worked to this point. Is we are making something that we find entertaining and we find funny. Yeah. We're not making something that we think kids will find funny. We're making things that we genuinely find funny or interesting.
And growing up watching TV that was aimed at kids, I remember a lot of it was like that. Saturday Disney and all those kind of shows. They were making it for themselves, and as kids, you just enjoyed the content and sort of playing along with it as well. But at the same time, I know what you mean. It'd be interesting to see what the kids
and what sneaks into that is references that maybe the parents will catch.
Sliders.
Yeah, all those 80s and 90s references that we put in are really for the parents and for ourselves.
Can I actually ask you, you're a father.
Yes.
Does your son watch Spawn Point?
No, he's too young. He's only 3.5. So
when will you introduce him to the show?
I've only just introduced him to video games with an iPad.
Right, sure.
And even that, I feel like is too early days.
I feel like 5 is generally almost the youngest that we have as part of the Spawn Point audience.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you, do they walk at 5? Are they talking at 3? I'm so bad at this.
Well, he already knows who Darren is because when he comes into the office, he'll stop at Darren 1.0, who sits in the office.
Yeah.
Wow. And he'll say, oh, look, Daddy, it's the robot.
Man, I would have been so scared of that as a kid. I think I was scared of a lot of large anthropomorphic things, mall Santas and all that kind of stuff. No, I didn't. So that would have scared me.
Just to finish off, guys, I've got a few audience questions.
Great.
I'm going to combine 3 of these questions together from Doug Moss, Nick Halliday, and Philip Munn. Basically, all 3 have said, there are a lot of new elements in the show right now. It feels occasionally a little bit rushed for a half-hour show.
Sure.
What's, the possibility of making 1-hour shows per week?
I would say, along with what is your favourite game, why can't you make an hour show as our next most asked question on Good Game.
Yeah.
So there's a number of reasons, but basically, just to wrap it up, it takes a lot of manpower and money to make a half hour of television, and to double that every week, it suddenly blows out our entire schedule. And just for example, we obviously do a sound mix of Good Game. Every television show does. We do that on the Tuesday that it's going to air, and if we were to suddenly make an hour of content, then we've got to spread it across the Monday and then the Tuesday, which means that our edit schedule gets put back. It is actually a huge amount of effort to churn out 1 hour.
You basically have to double the resources. So,
exactly,
if ABC wants to give us double the budget for Good Game, then possibly we can make an hour show.
We would need more editors. We would need probably another host.
I mean,
otherwise these guys would be completely burned out.
And I think, obviously, the question gets asked because occasionally we do put an hour special to air. And they do wreck us a little bit.
Yes, I want to explain to listeners what actually goes on when we have to do hour specials. So we have the exact same resources usually for an hour special than a half-hour show. And what happens is we have to have 2 sound mixes. So as Ben mentioned, we have a sound mix on Tuesday. It means we also have to have a sound mix on Monday, which means essentially an hour episode has to be finished and cut by Friday night. So for example, an hour special for E3, Andy and I are in the edit suite till like 1:30 a.m. Friday night finishing off the cut, because you can't actually just finish half an episode.
No.
Like, it's actually impossible, even though you're only sending half an episode to sound mix on Monday, you essentially have to cut an entire hour because you have to know what happens in the second half.
You have to know the halfway point.
Exactly. So, and usually we finish the edit on Monday night. For a half-hour episode. So essentially we're making double the episode with a day less of edit.
Plus the ripple-on effect that just has in terms of script writing, in terms of getting everyone's schedules down, and it just pushes everything back, and it it sort of bloats at the same time. And once those 1 hour specials go to air, we all sort of sit back and breathe a sigh of relief, and then it's sort of like, oh, half an hour, thank God.
Yeah, exactly. So 1 hour specials is essentially kind of kill the team.
And we really need to spread out our resources and our time when we build up to those 1 hour specials. Like, for example, yes, we did come back with a 1 hour special this year, but that was because we had the time. We came back a couple of weeks before the show, so we had like 3 weeks to make the show.
Well, the thing is,
there was also the content. There was
the
enough
arcade
games
story
around.
I was cutting 2-3 weeks before we actually entered production for the first episode. So that was essentially 10 minutes. That was from the first ep. That was kind of ready before the first episode was even
started
shot.
Shooting. That's right. Yeah. But I genuinely do think as well, we've got to be careful. I think making a 1 hour show, say for example they're like, all right, you guys can now make an hour. It's a slippery slope, because then we're suddenly coming up with an hour of content every single week based around the gaming media. And we all know that June, July, August period is a little bit light on for games, and suddenly then we're scrambling around kind of going, well, what actually are we going to talk about? And I think that it is great to finish a half hour of television and kind of go, wow, there was a lot in there, or I actually want more. That's good. That means we've done our job. That means you hopefully will be back, next Tuesday night to watch more of it. You would hate to feel like you got to, minute 45 and like, oh, guys, just wrap it up. Like, okay, you've made your point.
Yeah, if you want like a 20-minute Nick Boy first play.
Yeah, that's right.
and like every hour episode.
You're right. There would be those times where we would have to essentially sort of pad things out with extra little segments and fluff pieces, and before you know it, you'd feel like that wasn't worth it for an hour. Yeah. And it wouldn't be special anymore.
It wouldn't be special. And look, we know that you guys are busy playing games. Like, you probably just only have enough time for a half hour of good game content.
Yeah, if we could do it, at the end of every half hour, Ben would come on camera and just go, shoot, and like shoot everyone back.
Still watching?
Go back to play your games.
Just think that other half hour can be spent reloading your XCOM 2 saves.
You know what you do on a Tuesday night now, eh?
Yeah. On that note, I think that's a great point to finish. Go play some XCOM 2 now. Thanks very much to all of you for joining me today.
Thanks, Lin.
Pleasure.
And, of course, if you have any topics for conversation, you can tweet me at LGeology or leave a comment on SoundCloud and Facebook. Till next time, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.